In the desolate, crimson expanse of Mars, a tale of unparalleled human endurance, scientific ingenuity, and the profound interconnectedness of humanity began to unfold. The Ares 3 mission, a pioneering six-person expedition to the Red Planet, was brought to a terrifying, premature conclusion by a brutal dust storm, a tempest of Martian grit and fury. The HAB, the crew's vital living module, designed to withstand winds of up to 150 km per hour, was relentlessly pummeled by gusts that screamed past 175 km per hour. The decision to abort the mission, a grim imperative to safeguard their Mars ascent vehicle, MAV, from catastrophic damage and avoid an irreversible stranding, was made with heavy hearts by Commander Melissa Lewis. During the desperate, wind-lashed sprint from the HAB to the MAV, an unimaginable catastrophe struck. Mark Watney, the mission's botanist and mechanical engineer, was hit. A communications dish antenna, ripped from its moorings by the storm's savage might, became a projectile, striking him with concussive force. The impact was devastating, tearing through his spacesuit and piercing his side. The sudden, violent depressurization of his suit was heralded by an immediate, agonizing vacuum that sucked the breath from his lungs and the consciousness from his mind. The last image seared into his fading awareness was the outstretched hand of his crewmate, Johansson, a fleeting, desperate gesture of a rescue that would tragically come too late. His suit's biomonitors flatlined, sending an unequivocal signal to the others. Mark Watney was dead. Bound by the cold, unyielding dictates of space exploration protocols, which mandated that a deceased crew member be left behind to conserve precious mass for the MAV's return journey, the remaining 5 astronauts, in agony, lifted off. Mark Watney was alone, marooned on a lifeless world, billions of miles from home. When Mark Watney awoke, it was to the insistent, piercing shriek of his suit's low oxygen alarm, a desperate, automated plea from the technology designed to keep him alive. He lay face down, partially buried in the ochre Martian regolith, the storm's fury having subsided to an eerie calm. The communications dish antenna, the very instrument of his near demise, had, by a twist of cruel irony, also become his improbable savior. Having speared him through his side, it had been arrested by his pelvis, creating a single, horrifying wound that, against all odds, sealed itself. His own blood, rapidly exposed to the near vacuum of Mars, boiled and then congealed, forming a gruesome, viscous seal around the breach in his suit. This biological plaster, while agonizingly slow, allowed his suit to maintain a tenuous internal pressure, just enough to prevent immediate, fatal decompression. His suit, in its relentless, programmed pursuit of his survival, had resorted to bloodletting, periodically venting small amounts of precious air to purge accumulating carbon dioxide, and, as a last resort, pumping pure oxygen from his reserve tank. This desperate measure kept him breathing, yet placed him in the ironic peril of oxygen toxicity. With his astronaut training asserting itself through the haze of pain and disorientation, Mark, with trembling hands, applied a breach kit, a simple funnel and sticky resin, to properly seal the gruesome tear after the agonizing self-extraction of the antenna. The pain was searing, a constant, throbbing reminder of his injury, but the immediate threat of depressurization had been miraculously averted. Checking his suit's readouts, his eyes widened at the alarmingly high 85% oxygen level, a stark and dangerous contrast to Earth's breathable 21%. It was a consequence of his suit's emergency life support, a necessary evil that kept him alive but presented a new, insidious threat. Limping, every movement a fresh wave of agony, Mark navigated the treacherous, storm-scarred landscape back towards the HAB. The sight that greeted him was a paradox of relief and despair. The HAB, his only sanctuary, was miraculously intact, a shining beacon in the Martian twilight. But the MAV, his one-way ticket home, was gone, a phantom outline on the horizon where it had once stood. The stark reality of his isolation crashed over him. He was a castaway, utterly alone on Mars, with a HAB designed for a 31-day mission and a communication array mangled beyond any immediate hope of repair. The next Martian day, Sol 7, dawned with a cold, unforgiving clarity. Mark undertook a methodical inventory of his predicament. The initial 56-day food supply for 6 people, intended as a generous redundancy, now translated into a potential 300 days for a single survivor. Through stringent rationing, he calculated, he could extend this to a precarious 400 days. He had an abundance of EVA suits, a small comfort in his vast predicament, and the HAB's critical life support systems, the oxygenator and water reclaimer, were, mercifully, operational, though the latter lacked a backup, a constant source of anxiety. His immediate and most pressing challenges were twofold: establishing communication with Earth, and securing a long-term, sustainable food supply. The Ares 4 mission, His only hope for human contact and potential rescue was a distant 4 years away, scheduled to land a staggering 3,200 kilometers from his current position. His initial, desperate goal: fix the radio. Days blurred into a monotonous cycle of futile attempts to locate the communications dish. Mark eventually conceded its probable burial beneath tons of Martian regolith, beyond any hope of recovery. His subsequent, desperate attempts to rig a rudimentary dish from scavenged parts proved equally fruitless. Interstellar communication demanded far more sophisticated equipment than he could possibly fabricate. He also confronted another grim reality: the finite lifespan of his EVA suit CO2 filters, with only 1,500 hours remaining. This forced him into a grim calculation, rationing his precious excursions outside the hab, each journey a deliberate gamble against the relentless ticking clock of his consumables. Yet, amidst the crushing despair, a stubborn flicker of hope ignited. His background in botany, seemingly a trivial skill on a barren planet, suddenly presented a lifeline. He conceived an audacious plan: to cultivate food within the confines of the hab. This ambitious endeavor would require Martian soil, a small, precious amount of Earth soil, preserved for bacterial inoculum, and, unappetizingly, his own processed waste as fertilizer, a process he wryly dubbed night soil. His vision was to transform the hab's entire 92 square meters of floor space into a functional farm, a monumental undertaking that would necessitate moving 9.2 cubic meters of Martian soil indoors. A stroke of luck, or perhaps cosmic benevolence, revealed viable potato eyes among the mission's dwindling food supplies, offering a caloric cornerstone for his desperate agricultural enterprise. The backbreaking labor of transferring Martian soil into the hab commenced on Sol 15. It was an agonizingly slow, physically punishing process, each scoop of soil a testament to his sheer will. Yet, Mark, ever the engineer, found ways to optimize the excruciating task, even resorting to the judicious use of pain medication to dull the relentless ache in his muscles. A crucial, almost catastrophic realization struck him on Sol 16. Martian soil, despite its appearance, was bone dry. It would require an astronomical amount of water to make it viable for planting. With a deep breath and a heavy heart, he made a calculated, terrifying gamble. He would dedicate nearly all of the hab's reserve water, a precious 250 liters, to this desperate endeavor. It was an all-or-nothing sacrifice, but one he knew was absolutely necessary for his long-term survival. Back on Earth, the seemingly impossible news of Mark Watney's survival sent shockwaves through NASA. Mindy Park, a sharp-eyed satellite imagery analyst, was the first to detect his continued presence, reviewing recent Mars images with a routine diligence that suddenly yielded a miracle. The initial wave of ecstatic relief quickly gave way to a frantic, all-consuming scramble for a rescue plan. Venkat Kapoor, the stern but deeply committed director of Mars operations, and Teddy Sanders, the pragmatic and often politically calculating NASA administrator, became the central figures in this desperate, high-stakes endeavor. Their immediate, overwhelming priority: establishing communication with their lost astronaut. The solution emerged from an unlikely, almost forgotten corner of space history: the Pathfinder mission, a dormant Mars lander from 1997. Accompanied by its diminutive companion, the Sojourner rover. Bruce Ng, the brilliant and often eccentric director of JPL, spearheaded the audacious effort to reactivate Pathfinder, believing that Mark, with his mechanical genius, could somehow jury-rig a rudimentary communication link. The concept was to use Pathfinder's antiquated, almost comically slow systems to communicate with Mark's modern rover. While the rover's software could not be updated remotely, a clever young software engineer named Jack Trevor proposed an ingenious workaround: instruct Mark to manually insert a small code patch into his rover's software. This would allow it to log incoming data from Pathfinder, essentially creating a speak and spell method of communication. It was painstakingly slow, transmitting messages 1 byte at a time, but it offered a fragile, invaluable lifeline. On Sol 79, a moment of immense triumph and collective relief echoed across 2 planets. Mark, through sheer tenacity and brilliant improvisation, successfully re-established communication with Earth via Pathfinder. Messages, painstakingly slow to transmit, began to trickle through, confirming his survival, detailing the miraculous success of his thriving potato farm, and outlining his audacious plan to travel to the Ares 4 landing site. He pleaded for faster communication, lamenting the agonizing speak and spell method, and, in a moment of characteristic dark humor, playfully asked his crewmates to tell Commander Lewis that disco still, emphatically, sucked. However, the fragile communication link, a slender thread connecting 2 worlds, was tragically short-lived. In a moment of impatience and miscalculation, Mark, attempting to connect Pathfinder directly to his rover's primary power supply for a more stable connection, triggered a catastrophic electrical overload. The delicate, decades-old electronics of Pathfinder were instantly fried, plunging Mark back into the crushing solitude of Martian isolation on Sol 119. He was, once again, utterly alone, the vast, silent, indifferent landscape of Mars his only companion. The short-lived hope of regular contact vanished, replaced by the heavy mantle of silence. Despite the crushing setback, Mark's spirit, forged in the crucible of adversity, remained remarkably unbroken. He continued his grueling, solitary work, transforming the hab into a truly functional farm, meticulously tending to his potato plants, and ensuring his continued, precarious survival. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Ares 3 crew, aboard the Hermes, were still grappling with the initial, devastating news of Mark's supposed death. Commander Lewis, the stoic leader, Martinez, the meticulous pilot, Beck, the calm flight surgeon, Vogel, the brilliant navigator, and Johansson, the quiet computer expert, had been forced to make the agonizing decision to launch without him, their hearts heavy with the conviction that he was lost to the storm. A new, radical idea, born from the brilliant but eccentric mind of an astrodynamics specialist named Rich Purnell, began to gain traction within the hallowed halls of NASA. The Rich Purnell maneuver, as it came to be known, was an audacious, high-risk, high-reward proposition. It involved the Hermes, already far along its journey back to Earth, performing a daring gravity assist around its home planet. This slingshot maneuver would then propel the ship back towards Mars, allowing it to intercept a hastily prepared resupply probe from China, the Taiyang Shen, graciously offered by the China National Space Administration. The final, most dangerous phase would be a perilous flyby rescue of Mark. It was a strategy that would significantly extend the Hermes mission, pushing the boundaries of crew endurance and risking their lives, but it offered the only viable path to saving Watney. The decision to inform the Hermes crew of Mark's survival and the audacious Rich Purnell maneuver was fraught with ethical and logistical complexities. After intense internal debate and a classified meeting involving the highest echelons of NASA, Teddy Sanders, with a weighty sigh, gave the improbable go-ahead. The crew of the Hermes, initially stunned by the revelation that their comrade was alive, quickly rallied. Their unanimous vote to execute the maneuver was a testament to their unwavering loyalty and deep bond. Johansson, the mission's quiet computer wizard, even found a way to disable the remote override from mission control, ensuring their autonomy in carrying out the risky, unsanctioned rescue. Their camaraderie transcended the millions of miles separating them. Mark, blissfully unaware of the monumental efforts being undertaken on his behalf, continued his solitary existence, his singular focus fixed on survival. He embarked on his own monumental undertaking, a long-distance journey across the Martian surface. He meticulously modified one of the rovers for extended travel, reinforcing its structure and enhancing its life support systems. He then constructed a makeshift trailer, a cumbersome but essential addition, powered by HAB batteries, to carry his vital supplies and a bedroom for extended trips outside the HAB. His ultimate destination, Schiaparelli Crater, the Ares 4 landing site, a staggering 3,200 kilometers away. It was a journey that would push his modified vehicle and his own physical and mental limits to their absolute breaking point. On Sol 439, Mark began his long-distance test drive, loading the rover and trailer with the anticipated weight for his real journey. His meticulous planning was not just a preference, but a grim necessity. Any malfunction far from the HAB could spell his certain doom. He continued to leave cryptic Morse code messages spelled out in rocks, a desperate and excruciatingly slow communication method, but one that alerted NASA to his continued movement and existence, a persistent flicker of life against the vast Martian canvas. His epic journey was fraught with peril. A massive dust storm, far larger and more intense than the one that had initially stranded him, threatened to engulf him entirely. This storm, a force of nature on a scale unimaginable on Earth, significantly reduced the efficiency of his solar cells, his sole power source. He meticulously tracked its movements, using his understanding of power loss to gauge his position relative to the storm's churning, relentless edge, attempting a harrowing, desperate race against its slow but inexorable advance. There were moments of sheer terror, where the dust cloud swallowed the sun, plunging him into a terrifying, powerless darkness. A critical error during a difficult maneuver, a moment of fatigue or perhaps misjudgment, led to his rover and trailer rolling over, a heart-stopping incident that jeopardized his entire mission. Despite being bruised and sore, and having to sleep uncomfortably on the wall of the capsized rover, he managed, through sheer grit and mechanical ingenuity, to right both vehicles. His brief, terse Morse code message, "Rolled. Fixing now," sent a fresh wave of anxiety through NASA, who had been following his perilous progress via satellite imagery, a silent, desperate prayer for his continued survival. As Hermes, a silver needle in the blackness, finally approached Mars, the audacious final phase of the rescue began. The plan involved a perilous Mars atmospheric braking maneuver, a controlled plunge into the planet's thin atmosphere to slow the ship down, followed by an incredibly risky maneuver to intercept Mark's modified MAV. The Hermes crew, demonstrating their extraordinary courage and resourcefulness, also initiated a desperate, improvised plan to blow a hole in the ship's airlock to create a controlled thrust, a precise, violent expulsion of air that would fine-tune their trajectory for the intercept. Vogel, the German astronaut, a master of chemistry, was tasked with creating the precisely calibrated explosive, while Beck, the unflappable flight surgeon, prepared for a daring EVA, a spacewalk into the void, to retrieve Mark. The climactic rescue unfolded in a tense, nail-biting ballet of precision, physics, and profound bravery. Mark, inside his small, stripped-down MAV, had been forced to shed every non-essential gram of weight, including the nose cone, to make it light enough for Hermes to capture. Beck, tethered to Hermes, ventured out into the icy blackness of space, a solitary figure against the backdrop of Mars, prepared to cut his tether and rely solely on his manned maneuvering unit, MMU, if necessary to reach Mark's rapidly approaching vehicle. Commander Lewis, despite her profound fear for her crew, firmly prohibited Mark from attempting any untethered movement until he was securely latched to Beck, an order born of both discipline and deep maternal concern. The final moments were fraught with unbearable anxiety, as the two vehicles, one a massive starship, the other a tiny, precarious ascent vehicle, converged with agonizing slowness. With expert maneuvering from Martinez at the helm of Hermes, and unparalleled courage from Beck, the two men met in the vacuum of space. Beck, with a powerful surge of his MMU, successfully intercepted Mark, securing him and beginning the slow, arduous journey back to the safety of Hermes. The moment Mark Watney, alive, profoundly exhausted, and smelling, by all accounts, like a particularly pungent skunk, was finally pulled into the welcoming confines of the airlock, his long, unimaginable nightmare on Mars finally, mercifully, ended. He had endured 549 sols, a staggering year and a half, on the desolate, unforgiving surface of the Red Planet, a living, breathing testament to his scientific knowledge, his unparalleled mechanical aptitude, and an unwavering, almost pathological determination to survive. His survival became a global phenomenon, a beacon of human resilience, and a powerful symbol of the collective, universal effort to help one another. Reflecting on his incredible ordeal, as he slowly recuperated aboard the Hermes, Mark profoundly understood the immense cost and the staggering collective effort poured into his rescue. Hundreds of millions of dollars, the abandonment of long-term, critical projects by space agencies across the globe, all dedicated to saving one dorky botanist. But he also knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his soul, why they bothered. It wasn't just about the abstract ideals of progress or the allure of scientific discovery. It was about something far more fundamental, something intrinsically human. It was about the basic, undeniable instinct to help each other, a universal truth that transcends cultures, nationalities, and the seemingly uncaring vastness of space. He was alive, bruised, battered, and still intensely hungry, and, as Johansson would attest, he indeed smelled terrible, but it was, without a shadow of a doubt, the happiest day of his life. He was, finally, coming home. His story echoed across the stars, a powerful testament to the enduring power of hope and the unbreakable spirit of humanity.